to the right of centre to me, left of centre to you, the ITC's chairman, George Russell. To his left, David Glencross, the chief executive. To his left, Gary Tongue, the controller of engineering. And on the far right to you, no, far left to you, far right to me, Peter Rogers, the Deputy Chief Executive and the Director of Finance. The Chairman will make a brief opening statement, then we will... Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming at such short notice. It's disappointing to announce today that the Commission will not be awarding the Channel 5 licence to Channel 5 Holdings, who were the single applicant for the licence. Applications were invited in April of this year, and the closing date was the 7th of July. Channel 5 Holdings submitted a cash bid of £1,000. The Commission cannot proceed to award a licence unless, in its opinion, the applicant satisfies the statutory test as laid down by the Broadcasting Act of 1990. The proposals in the application, including further information relating to the funding of the proposed service recently provided by Channel 5 Holdings, have been carefully assessed by the Commission in accordance with the Act. The applicant's business plan was provided to the Commission in confidence, as was all the further financial information which the applicant has subsequently provided. It appeared to the Commission that the proposed service of Channel 5 Holdings Limited would comply with the requirements of Section 16, brackets 1A of the Broadcasting Act, which is the programme quality threshold. However, it did not appear to the Commission that the applicant would be able to maintain its proposed service throughout the 10 years for which the licence would be in force. The Commission, having previously twice extended the timetable for its decision at the applicant's request, had made it clear that it would not be minded to postpone a decision beyond its meeting of the 17th of December. Some 8 months after the licence was advertised and more than 5 months since the application was received. On the basis of all the evidence before them at yesterday's meeting, members of the Commission decided that 1. They were not satisfied with the applicant's business plan, having particular regard to some of the projected costs and to the audience share and revenue projections which it contained, and they were not satisfied with the level of investor commitment. And for those reasons, it did not appear to them that the applicant would be able to maintain its proposed service throughout the period for which the licence would be in force. I cannot elaborate further on the reasons I've just given, which were communicated to Channel 5 Holdings a short while ago. We've expressed our gratitude to Channel 5 for the time and effort that went into the preparation of the application and for supplying the further information which helped us make our decision. Thank you. The Commission prepared carefully and thoroughly for the advertisement of the Channel 5 licence. We issued draft documents in November 1991, setting the basic requirements which the licensee would have to meet. As a result of comments received, we adjusted downwards some of those requirements, including the setting the first part of the tender at 0% of annual qualifying revenue. These adjustments were in recognition of the financial constraints of the Channel 5 operator in the early years of the licence. We're conscious that today's announcement is not just a blow to Channel 5 Holdings, but raises a question mark over the future of Channel 5 itself. The Commission is bound by the provisions of the Broadcasting Act in relation to licensing a Channel 5 service. We shall now have to begin a review, examining carefully the options open to us, including re-advertisement of the licence. I'm now willing to take some questions which my colleagues and I will do our best to tackle, but I must remind you that the Channel 5 Holdings business plan was submitted to us in confidence, and we cannot therefore disclose particular information from it in answer to your questions.
Apart from the advertising, what other options are open?
Well, it is likely to be a fairly long review, but one of the interesting happenings of the past year is once the various VCR manufacturers and suppliers became aware that this channel was blocked by this retuning situation, all new ones have gone out retuned. It is therefore, given the fact about 70% of the country's got VCRs, we have to assess one of the things is when that problem will be at its lowest, because there will be a replacement taking place regularly over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. That's one of the options we'll be assessing. But it's a full-blown review as to where could this fit and how could we launch it.
How far was your decision influenced by the poor economic condition and the advertising market, by the shortage of advertising in the market, in London especially?
Basically, we had a much longer assessment that didn't take today's considerations into account. It was a much longer look at advertising revenue, what we thought of it. It wasn't influenced by today.
But that played a part in your decision, your long-term view of the future advertising revenue.
Of course, that's where we said. I used the phrase that we weren't satisfied with the revenue.
Were you influenced at all by the suggestions?
Sorry, I just said we weren't satisfied with the revenue projections.
Were you influenced at all by the suggestions of Carlton and LWT to go to judicial review if you awarded the franchise?
We took no note of them.
No.
Could you say a bit more about what your position is on that, though, as to whether it would have been...
On what, sorry?
On the charge that you would effectively, by having a city station, be moving the goalposts for the Channel 3 contracts?
We didn't think we were moving the goalposts. As far as we were concerned, it fitted. They were asked certain things, they came forth with them, and that's why we said the quality situation was acceptable, which covers city and opt-out television around the country.
The invitation to apply and indeed the debates in Parliament as the bill was going through made it quite clear that opt-outs for Channel 5 were always a possibility. There was no obligation on any of the applicants to put forward opt-outs, but it was certainly something which was open to them to suggest.
Did the bid pass the technical provisions? I remember, David, you said even over a year ago that Channel 5 might not be awarded if that quality threshold of sorts.
Channel 5 holdings.
Channel 5 holdings.
Yes, we were satisfied that the...
We weren't satisfied with the shareholder commitment that came forward.
It's worth remembering that the Act lays down that the Commission has to satisfy.
Were you influenced by any fears that Channel 5 had it could have tilted?
Looked at the revenue of Channel 5, where it fitted, but took no regard of what it did to anybody else.
Sir George, this would appear to be the second kick in the teeth from the ITC for Thames Television in just over a year. Are you a bit concerned about that at all?
Can't be.
Refer to the fact, I think Derek Glencross referred to the fact.
No, we were satisfied with the technical concept of how they were going to handle it. We believe the route that we're going on could be low in terms of the cost of doing it.
So you felt that
The technical aspects of doing it, we believe they found the way, they showed percentage of video penetration, I think, in Europe. And therefore it takes longer than it would in any other country to sort that problem out.
Sorry, I've actually written down some questions because there's so many things I need to ask that
Right.
at times I actually have to refer to it. I do apologise.
Rolling.
I don't want to appear rude, but that's some fault there. What was it about this shareholder commitment, that you call it, that you didn't like?
Well, we expect with shareholder commitment to see exactly what the money is they're putting down, who they are, have they got their shareholders' agreements in place. These are the kind of things you look for. We weren't satisfied after 2 extensions that we got the commitment necessary.
Even with commitment from the biggest independent producer, a broadcaster in Britain, and one of the biggest media companies in the world, Time Warner, you still weren't convinced?
Well, I think we always have to say, as we've just said, we didn't think the commitment was as strong as we would have liked it.
What do you mean by the commitment not being as strong
Well,
as you would have liked?
I'm not prepared to take it any further. We've made the statement that shareholder commitment wasn't satisfactory. You said one of the biggest in the world has made a commitment. perhaps you should find out what that commitment was. We're not revealing these because these are confidential between these companies.
If Thames had, for example, as the leader in the Channel 5 shareholdings group, if Thames had decided to abandon its independent producer status, which would have meant it could have taken more than a 15% holding in the company, would that have influenced your decision in a different manner?
Again, no comment on that. For all you know, they may have abandoned it. I can't comment.
Do you think Channel 5 is actually a goer under any circumstances?
Well, we felt up to yesterday it was likely to be. We had great hopes for it because the biggest task that I felt had to be solved was solved, which was the how on earth do you retune these videos that threw a real spanner in the works of this whole concept, because it put a very big upfront loading, as you're well aware, on doing this job. But the consortium seemed to come through with a route that was acceptable. So having overcome that hurdle, other hurdles that weren't overcome might be in the future if we can review the whole situation and see is there a better way of doing it.
In that case, can you say what is it that an applicant has to do to get the license under current legislation?
Well, if we were to re-advertise, it would still be a national channel, and if it was to start tomorrow again, it would still be the same number of videos to be retuned, the same upfront cost. Those are the things that have to look at, solve, and come through with a financial and business plan and shareholders that enable them to carry it out.
You said at the conference today that you're going to review the whole situation now before you make a decision about whether to reapply, whether to re-advertise or not. Mm-hmm. Will the review come before you decide to make a re-advertisement for the channel?
Oh, it has to. We've got to really sit down and say, here is a spectrum. What do we do with it? What do we think is the best thing? And if it requires a change in the Act of Parliament, we'll have to ask for it. That doesn't mean we'll get it, but we'll have to really try and say, this is perhaps a better way of handling this spectrum.
So no re-advertisement until you've had your review?
No, no.
What timescale are we talking about here?
I can't say, because it was only yesterday we took the decision that this wasn't going ahead.
By not awarding a license today, you may well have deprived Channel 5 Holdings of what they feel was a reasonable enterprise, but haven't you also deprived the viewers of further choice in television broadcasting in this country?
Well, the answer is the viewers, I think, would have welcomed the Channel 5 starting. We would welcome it starting, but it has to start under the conditions that we have to carry out in the Broadcasting Act, which is that we have to satisfy ourselves that it's sustainable through the period, and that the shareholding situation is one that would allow us to believe that. So the viewers may get a Channel 5 later, but not as of today.
The decision today will quite probably please London Weekend Television and Carlton Television, who are taking over the Channel 3, or who will be operating Channel 3 franchises in the new year. It's also been another kick in the teeth for Thames Television, wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's obviously another disappointment for Thames. We are disappointed as well. But it's like everything else. These are business decisions. A few weeks ago, Thames looked to have launched a very successful venture with the BBC. That's a good winner, or it looks like being a good winner. This one isn't right. So it is another block to Thames, but it's not saying this is intentional because it's Thames. Just they happen to be one of the members.
Thames has said that it may well seek a judicial review of the decision that you've made, just as indeed other television companies said that they would seek a judicial review if you had awarded the licence. Were you more frightened of them than you were of Thames?
Well, I have to say we disregarded all threats of judicial review from either parties when we looked at this and took this decision. It wasn't relevant to us.
Thank you, sir. Just
You can have a little measure up on the nose if you want, just as you would normally, just to see, as if you were going to stick it.
Mm-hmm. Is that comfortable?
Mm-hmm. So the thing is that you go cross-eyed after a while. It's a goodly hooter.
Nice thought.
A goodly hooter.
Central.
Mm.